Please mute your microphones for the duration of the call. We're also asking, if you are not a panelist, please turn off your cameras. For the recording, we do want to see our panelists nice and big, so if you can turn off your camera, that would be great. Do not put the call on hold for any reason. If you do, we get some weird feedback in audio. And if you do not mute yourself, I'll mute you. That's just how this works. Please send me a message in the chat if you have any technical difficulties or if you have any questions. We're going to put the recording of today's session up on the Common Learning portal. I'll drop a link for that in just a moment in the chat. And there is a question and answer portion of the webinar, I think near the end, but you can drop in your questions at any time. I'll be collecting those, and Quinn will give me a heads up when she wants me to ask those. If you have a hard time finding the chat, you hover over the bottom of your screen, there's a little toolbar that comes up, and to the right, you'll see something that looks like a chat bubble. Click on that and it'll open up on the right side of your panel. And with that, I'll turn it over to the moderator for our discussion today, Quinn. Quinn, you're on mute.
Hi. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Quinn Brett. I worked seasonally for the National Park Service as a climbing ranger for 5 years. And in 2017, I took a big climbing fall and broke my back, which ended up in permanent paralysis, roughly below my navel. So my perspective of playing in the national parks and working in the national parks was drastically changed. I am back now working with the national parks. I am split amongst the wilderness division, the accessibility division, and the outdoor recreation division. So as my passions are still the same of wanting to recreate in our national parks, but how our access is incredibly different. So joining us today, I have 3 panelists of that similar passion for recreation. And we're going to speak to the variety of mobility devices that are out there that go with the variety of disabilities that are out there. I was going to do a little reference of some documents here to give you guys a little perspective on, we will be talking about wheelchairs and what the definition of a wheelchair is, given the DOJ and the Wilderness Act. And what is an other powered mobility device? And we will probably be covering a little bit on e-bikes, as that has just been entering our realm in the National Park Service. So I'm sharing with you now a small diagram that describes the rules to define what a wheelchair is in wilderness. So there are 2 rules. Number 1, the device must be designed solely for use by a mobility impaired person for locomotion. Number 2, it must be suitable for use in an indoor pedestrian area. And what that is referring to is like door width for a pedestrian area, the ADA requirements are 36 inches or less. And of course you would want some non-damaging tread to your device that wouldn't damage the wood or tile floors, for example, but is also suitable for outdoor locomotion. And number 3, this diagram asks if your device is battery powered. And in this case, even in wilderness, both battery or non-battery powered wheelchairs are allowed anywhere foot travel is allowed in wilderness. Gas powered is not suitable, as that wouldn't be suitable in an indoor pedestrian area. Our next slide, if you've answered no to either number 1, which the device is not made solely for use by a mobility impaired person, or if you answered no to number 2, it is not suitable for an indoor pedestrian area, like it wouldn't fit in a doorway that's 36 inches wide, or perhaps, or it's got gas powered, then that device would be considered to be an other powered driven mobility device, an OPDMD. Examples of those include golf carts, the ever popular Segway machine that we see around. So these are devices that people with mobility issues can use, but because they're not made solely for that person, they are under a different classification. And to decide whether your park or your facility will allow an OPD, there are certain specifications that you can rely on to decide if it would be appropriate at that time of year, in that season, whatever it is. So number one, the type, the size, the weight, the dimensions, and the speed of the device would be appropriate for where a person with a disability might be asking to use it. The facility's volume of pedestrian traffic, which can vary at times of year, of course, we know that, can vary. So maybe they're allowed to use it in the off season instead of the busy summer months. Number three, the facility's design and operational characteristics, whether it's a service program or activity that is conducted indoors, its square footage, how big is this device, and would it be appropriate or cumbersome to have it in there? Number four, whether legitimate safety requirements can be established to permit safe operation. And number five, whether the use of the other powered mobility device creates a substantial serious harm to the immediate environment, natural or cultural resources within the federal lands that it's being asked to be used. So with that, I want to introduce our three panelists who will be talking about their variety of mobility devices. We have Joe Stone, Jason Stauffer, and Roy Tuscany with us here today. And I'd love for you gentlemen to give a brief intro of yourself, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your disability. Joe, let's start with you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Joe Stone. Thanks for the intro, Quinn. Some useful information. I was injured about 10 years ago doing a sport called speed flying. So just to give you a brief history of that, speed flying is basically like flying small skydiving parachutes off of mountains, also known as another form of paragliding. So before my injury, skydiving, paragliding, hiking, mountain biking, kind of a lot of the master of none kind of thing was my lifestyle. So really into the outdoors, national parks, BLM land, getting into wilderness areas, backpacking for multiple days. The outdoors has just been a massive part of my life. It's why I moved out west from Minnesota originally. Injured in 2010 after some things went wrong with my inputs that I made in my speed flying wing, which sent me spiraling down, and I crashed into the side of a mountain there in Missoula. Sustained a lot of internal injuries, the main one being the 8 broken vertebrae throughout my neck and back with spinal cord damage at the C7 level, so the lowest in my neck, which makes me a high functioning quadriplegic. So I'm diagnosed as an incomplete C7 quadriplegic, paralyzed from pretty much the nipples down, maybe a little bit lower. I have full function in my arms, but my hands are what's affected. So the big misconception with quadriplegia is that a lot of people think that you're paralyzed from the neck down. Really what it means is you have impairment in all 4 limbs. So for me, it's my hands that really qualify me to be a quadriplegic. So I don't have any grip in my left. I can open it a little bit, but I have 0 grip in my left. That's as much as I can lift my fingers. And I'm pretty lucky to have maintained or regained a lot of function. Although this hand is a lot weaker, when it gets cold, pretty much all function shuts off with it. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of my injury. Since then, I have been really focused on just maintaining the life that I love so much in the outdoors. So mountain biking is still a part of my life. Hiking on trails is very much a part of my life. Still paraglide and speed fly and spend a lot of time on our public lands, national parks being a big part of where I spend a lot of my time these days. I for a while spent the first couple of years trying to figure out my own situation and how I can get myself out. Then started recognizing that I'm not the only one out there to have access to the equipment and our environments to be in the outdoors, which kind of sent me on a path of wanting to help other people, kind of in parallel to helping myself as well. So I've started a foundation a number of years ago that's now no longer, but that was there to help kind of bridge the gap between the people with and without disabilities and those same organizations that support people without disabilities and the organizations supporting people with disabilities. So really trying to bring a level of inclusion in the outdoors. fast forwarding that with a lot of traveling and learning about the different environments, that led me to a position that I now hold at Teton Adaptive Sports in Jackson, Wyoming, where I'm the director of mission with Teton Adaptive. And we are taking everything I've been doing. It's a beautiful partnership because I feel like I've been working 10 years for this job to try to bring more inclusion into outdoor recreation. And so that's our main focus beyond providing recreation to all the locals and people traveling to the area. We are really working to try to bridge the gap to make outdoor recreation in our national parks and up in other areas as inclusive as possible. So yeah, that's the quick on me. And Quinn, you're muted.
I said, thanks, Joe. Roy, would you like to tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I unhit the mute button before talking. Hi, everybody. Quinn, first and foremost, such a pleasure to be asked to be a part of this, along with the other two guests who are incredible humans, just like yourself. So thank you. My name is Roy Tuscany. I am the founder of the High Fives Foundation, which was a creation from the idea of paying it forward. In 2006, I was an aspiring skier who loved anything that allowed gravity to fulfill my adrenaline rush, from skiing to mountain biking to, yeah, really those two things. I like to go fast. And one morning in Mammoth, I unfortunately went 130 feet on a 100-foot jump. I came down from 30 feet in the air and flat bottomed the landing and burst fractured my T12 vertebrae into my spine, causing paralysis at the T12 level. For 2 solid years, I rehabbed, and my incomplete paralysis got me to a point where I walk with a pretty heavy limp. My left leg is probably about 90% cured, and my right leg is basically bone and a little bit of muscle. So I've got a pretty good change in my gait. The thing for me outside of High Fives is a 501c3 nonprofit that supports the idea of preventing life-changing injuries, but providing resources and hope if they happen in the outdoors. So Quinn is actually a supported athlete of the foundation. She got hurt. We call individuals athletes because they have recovery goals. It doesn't mean they all have to be professional humans of absolute incredibleness like Quinn is on a rock face, but it's anybody with a goal in recovery. And we want to get them back out into sports, because the thing that I have realized is that it's very few times in life do you ever get the chance to fall back in love with something that you've lost. And for me, that's mountain biking. And I'm excited to share with you the way that I travel through all different trails and roads and bike areas all over Northern Nevada and Northern California on an e-bike. But for me, that gift came back because of this adaptation that actually is very similar to what Quinn brought up. Is it's not made for individuals with disabilities, but boy, does it help someone with a disability like myself and others that are known as walking paras. So it's an absolute honor to be sharing this all with you, and look forward to telling my story a little bit more, sharing what the organization does, but more importantly, talking about just the amount of joy that my e-assist mountain bike has provided to me this summer and just transformed everything. So thank you for the opportunity, and it's such an honor to be here today.
Thank you, Roy. All right, Jason, I'd love if you'd introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can see and hear me. Quinn, can you? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Quinn, thank you so much for your invite to participate on this panel. And everybody that's watching, thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear our story on disability and accessibility. I think I already introduced myself, or at least Quinn did. I'm Jason Stouffer, and I'm in Montana right now. I could give you a quick peek, I guess, maybe because I was sort of silhouetted, but this is our land here. We're kind of building on it, and that's what we get to see every day. I love the mountains, and I love the outdoors. And so anyhow, that's part of the reason I'm talking to you today. So in the way of a background, so experiencing wild places has always been a priority and a necessity in my life. I've found joy and I've found a livelihood there, and I'll continue to pursue that as a person with a spinal cord injury. Prior to my injury, recreationally, I mostly did long distance backpacking, mountaineering, archery, hunting. Professionally, I served in the search and rescue community in Alaska for several years. I was a wildland firefighter, a wilderness EMT, and a biological technician for the Park Service, actually, for quite a few years at Glacier National Park. For the past decade, I've been a federal law enforcement officer, and tasked there with daily patrols of this rugged country. And so I had training there on how to move through just about every aspect of what our terrestrial, at least the border country. So combined, I've got about 25 years of outdoor experiences in all the major ecosystems and in all of the public lands of the U.S. So on November 2nd, 2017, I was involved in a single vehicle rollover on icy roads, and I was ejected due to a seatbelt failure. I sustained an L1 lumbar 1 vertebral burst fracture, and that led to complete paraplegia. And so you guys heard a little bit from Joe, I think, was talking about quadriplegia, where paraplegia is kind of thoracic down, mostly loss of core and legs, depending on your level of injury. Due to my lower level of injury, I got quite a bit of return in upper leg function, which has allowed me to do a lot more, I guess, than maybe I could have otherwise. My left quadricep is about 75% back as far as strength, and my right is about 40%. I can stand upright and I can ambulate if I have leg braces and crutches. The best way to understand my injury is to kind of see me as a double amputee from the knees down. Because I can't feel or use anything below my knees, and I can only use a portion of my upper legs, just my quadriceps. So I'm able to go into extension, so I can straighten my legs out, and that's just about it. But my level of return was enough to get me. It's enough to get me into trouble, a sufficient amount of trouble. So like just the other day, I was convinced I could get up on my roof. I could climb a ladder and get up on my roof and install a chimney and chimney cap and collar and everything. And so my love of ropes and rope systems allows me to do this kind of stuff without getting injured too much. But so yeah, I do have some upper leg return, which allows me to do that. And so onto my mobility device, since my injury allows me to extend my legs, I opted for an e-assist recumbent, upright recumbent bike. And that's my primary means of exploring the woods. My trike is a good fit for me because it allows me to play around with the limits of my ability. Like I use my arms all day long. If I'm able to use what I got with my legs back, I kind of want to do that. It's quiet and it moves at bike speeds. So those are all pluses for me. I only use the minimal amount of assist really that I need just to propel me forward as a way to challenge myself, one, but also to preserve my battery life. The drawbacks of my trike is that it's a pretty high center of gravity. The wheelbase is pretty wide, and it's a reliance on an electrical system, which I've never liked. I've always, even if I was on horseback or on any sort of means of going through the woods, I always wanted to be able to get back on my own 2 feet. And so now with this reliance on an electrical system, it limits independence as could be understood. So I was also gifted what's called an action track chair. And that's my primary wheelchair. on my property. And so I use that. I use that to get around because it's kind of rugged and rolly where we are here, and it allows me to get just about everywhere. It's an amazing product, but I don't really use it in the woods. I don't really, because it's heavy and it's super slow. And so I have some video of that as well. That whenever you want us to share that, Quinn, I can share those.
This is a great segue. Whoa. A great segue to.
Sorry, Quinn, we're just getting feedback because people have their mics unmuted. Jason, do you mind muting your mic while Quinn gives directions?
Sure. I have a couple more. I've got just a couple more points on the intro thing. If this would be a good time to finish that up, because I think you were asking where we use, where we primarily use our bikes and recreate. And up here for me, I'm on Forest Service land mostly, just because I use old fire and logging roads, and where I'm at, the Forest Service is pretty much wilderness because there's nobody else out here where I go, and so that kind of lets me get out to where I want to be. So, okay, and turning it back over to you, Quinn.
Groovy. Jason, I was just going to say that's a great segue to maybe showing some photos or video of your devices and a good description of, like, if you know their width or their weight or how they are used. That would be lovely if you want to share that on your screen and tell us about it.
Okay, so I guess I'll go ahead and do that now. Share. Okay, I'm going to talk through this. Bear with me. Share screen. And I think we're almost there. Okay, do you guys see that?
It is coming in. It looks like. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go through a couple of pictures here, and when it gets to a video, I'll show you those. So this is me and my little girl. I've got 3 kids, and this is just back on a Forest Service trail. I don't go very fast speeds, so unfortunately you won't see me with a helmet on in most of these. So sorry, but I might pay for that later. But so this is on a Forest Service trail. My daughter is sitting on a little pedestal thing kind of behind me. I'm on this trike, and I've got a couple friends behind me on this.
And Jason, you are pedaling with your feet.
I'm pedaling with my feet, yeah. So my trike is also a really good coffee transporter. So this is actually in Helena, right near one of the universities there, and I've got a little 4-pack of coffees on the back of my trike. This is a vision or view of me on my trike on a Forest Service road, gated road, and just hunting during hunting season a couple of years ago. This is another picture of my trike and on a gravel road with my daughter. Another picture of hunting. Again, this trike is nice and quiet because it's battery operated. Doesn't make a whole lot of noise. So for activities in the woods where you don't want to make a lot of noise, it's optimal. My trike's about 30. I think the front tire width is like 32 inches. I don't know the weight, but it's pretty heavy. Okay, this is a picture of the Action track chair that I was gifted, and I'm actually in an upright standing position on this one. This is kind of cool. It's like you're hovering, kind of floating along through the universe where you're standing and just kind of moving along. My wife says I'm like the overlord, and this is my overlord position when I'm standing like this with that scowl on my face.
The Action tracks look very similar to like a tank.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of similar to a tank in the control. The controls are kind of like a powered wheelchair. There's a joystick. It's very intuitive. Anybody can really jump on and use it. My kids, go fetch it for me, or, play around with it in the woods all the time. It's a very powerful device. It probably weighs, I'm sure it's got to weigh 300, 400 pounds. At the rehab facility that I was in at Craig, they had them, but I never tried to get on them just because I didn't want to get on those and then like it so much and not be able to afford it, because they're something like $25,000. But this happened to be gifted to me, and I use it every day. This is a picture of that same track chair in the seated position, moving through some snowy roads in Montana during the winter.
Jason, do you by chance know the width of this action track chair?
I do. It is 38 inches across, so it doesn't. I guess it doesn't fall within the wheelchair category there, right?
Correct. I know that they make one model that is smaller, like purposely narrower. So there is one model out there that is, I think, 34 inches wide.
Right. So this is a video of me and my kids doing some like off trail stuff. And one of the other reasons I don't take this track chair anywhere but my little house homestead is because it is incredibly slow. So in this video, you will see the top speed of this thing, which is about 2.5 or 3 miles per hour. Yeah, that's my little daughter yapping. She's a yapper, so I don't even know what she's talking about. But okay, so that's the top speed of that, and a little video. And then I think I've got one more video of my trike that ends this thing out. Well, real quickly, this is a video of just an image of me and my son, and we're out at a reservoir and just doing some camping. And this is just a picture of me and my family, also just out on public land. This is an image of Glacier National Park during every year. Glacier National Park opens up their Going to the Sun road to primarily bike travel, because the snow is still too heavy in the upper area of Logan Pass. And so this was a day that we could just go out on these roads.
Do you feel, Jason, that without the battery, would you have been able to do a road like that?
Absolutely not. No way. So this bike goes to 9, I think, which is kind of an odd number. And like I say, I try to use the minimal amount that I can to get me forward. And I think I was going up that hill, up that grade, I was probably using 2 or maybe 3 out of 9. But there would have been no way that I could go up that at all. So, and then I'll end this with just a quick video of me and my family and on the trike here. And so yeah, that's pretty much what I have for any kind of audio visual.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing that. I think we have a few questions in our chat. Christy, do you mind reading those?
Yeah, sure. And I also wanted to point out, we will try and get those videos and the photos that folks are sharing, and I will embed those directly into the recording. So if you're like me and it was a little bit jumpy because your internet connection's not so great, you'll be able to see a clearer version in the recorded version as well. So our questions in the chat, we had one that said, so Jason, you said at one point, and please, if you're not a panelist, please turn off your camera. You said at one point you asked for a recumbent trike. what did you mean by ask? Were you making the request to someone to receive that?
Oh, that's funny. I didn't even realize I said that. Okay, so I was this recumbent trike. There was a person that I worked with who he got a hold of a bunch of different agencies after my accident, and like funding agencies. And there was an agency that was called the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. And they reached out to me and said, "Hey, what do you need, man?" And I told them, "Look, the only like real true need I have right now is to get back in the woods. That's the most important thing for me." And they said, "Well, you figure out exactly what you want and we've got it. We'll cover it completely for you." Now, these adaptive bikes and equipment, this stuff is extremely expensive. It's out of reach for so many people, and I can't stand that for people that I know and love that are in the same situation that can't afford these things. But this this foundation bought me the trike, and so when I said I asked for a recumbent, I guess maybe that's what I meant. I don't know if that answers the question. But.
Yeah, I think that does. Thank you. Then do you mind muting just for a second while I ask the next question? Thank you. It'll cut out the feedback. So the next question we have for you is, how do you get these devices in and out of a vehicle at a trailhead? Do you have a ramp, or do they come out like the rear of your vehicle?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that really that kind of looks a little bit into the whole independence factor, right? I am barely able to get this thing out of my vehicle, just me and my wheelchair. So usually I have friends or family along that go with me. But yeah, you can use ramps work. There are hitches that are made that go into a hitch receiver, and you can ride your trike up kind of sideways on that hitch. And I'm sure the other folks on the panel can talk to that as well.
Awesome. That's all we have for questions right now, Quinn, if you want to take back over.
Yes, that's actually a really good segue to Roy. I would love to hear and see about your devices, and maybe speak to the nature of how they're so expensive and how you have been helping that.
Hi there, guys. Yeah, thank you for that. So myself personally, what I use, and I'm going to share some screen here with you guys. So I'm just going to share my entire screen. All right, so can everybody see my screen right now? Is that good? Yeah. So, okay, let's go to this picture. So in this picture, what I am showing is a Scott Genius E900 Tune full suspension mountain bike. It is on the back rack of my car. That is how I transport it. As an incomplete paraplegic, I do have some use in my legs, very minimal. My right leg, I got a little bit of a quad muscle, and my left leg, I've got quad and hamstring. The problem is my feet. My feet don't work. So I have a really hard time keeping my feet on the pedal. That's a whole nother story. I use these large spikes and rubber soles to keep my feet as much as I can on the pedals at a time. Now, this bike that I use has a Shimano motor assist in it. It's not an electric like powered bike, as in there's a throttle. This is for every time I pedal, there's an electric assist that boosts me into the next gear or pedaling up the hill. Without this, I cannot pedal a bike. I can balance, but I have no ability to pedal at all. So without this bike, I cannot travel at all. So a normal mountain bike doesn't work for me. This mountain bike here, you know, allows me to ride a lot of different trails. I like to go explore. I love to climb up things to get to the top of mountain peaks because I cannot hike. I do have canes and poles, and can probably hike about 100 feet on a standard trail before it becomes too exhausting And no offense, 100 feet on a trail is really not going to get you that far. With this bike, I've climbed to the top of 8,000 foot tall mountains from the base and pedaled all the way top. I could never hike to do that. But I also find the most joy out of this because it's given me the ability to fly down the mountain and use gravity as the fastest force. So these are some trails around Lake Tahoe, Reno area. This is up in the Peavine area. And what the picture I'm showing you is going around a berm at a pretty high rate of speed and just cruising down the mountain. And for me, that's where I find the most joy. I also enjoy climbing up and over rocks because without this, I don't have the boost, or I don't have the ability to kick it into high gear, as someone might say. With this electric assist motor from Shimano, I am able to do this. And so this e-bike has really allowed me to go explore. I find it as much as a bike as a hiking tool, because without it, I truthfully cannot hike. And that is one of the biggest fears that I have, is not getting out to explore the peaks, the mountains, the valleys, all these places. This bike allows me to do it. And I can do it at a high rate of speed too, but always cautious to those around and the trails that I'm on, to be respectful, and also prioritizing the integrity of the trail as well. But for myself, that is what, I personally do. But then from the standpoint that Quinn talks about, the foundation that I run, High Fives Foundation, highfivesfoundation.org, if y'all would like to check it out, helps individuals that have been hurt in outdoor mountain sports and returns them to the sports that they love. To date, we have funded 62 adaptive mountain bikes, and soon we'll be adding to that number, as we are just provided funds for 10 additional bowhead bikes that are going to be distributed across America. The bowhead bike that I speak of is found in this. It's the one that looks like a Star Wars speeder bike. It is an electric bike. It is fully electric powered, but it also provides a suspension system that is unmatched by almost any other adaptive bike out there. The foundation provides fiscal grants 4 times a year. 3 grants are to those that have been hurt in outdoor sports. And our September grant is to provide adaptive equipment to individuals that have sustained life-changing injuries but didn't have them happen in an outdoor sport, so that you can get that piece of equipment or get that funding that's needed to get participating in outdoor sports once again. For me, I believe that, everyone should be kind, because a lot of times I roll up on people. I'm a 39-year-old white male, and I get a lot of looks on my e-bike. But once people hear the reason, the transformation of their attitude towards that bike completely changes. And so the biggest thing for me is helping push the expectations and stereotypes that have been put on these and how they are used, because what they do is they empower those with disabilities to get back out into the trails, the sports and the mountains that we love. And without them, a lot of us would not be able to do this. So, from the bike I use to the one that Joe talked about, there's many different ways. But the thing that they all do is they provide transportation to individuals that unfortunately can't find the ability to transport themselves on their own. I encourage you all to ask questions about the foundation and also the bike I use, and open to any of them. And hopefully this can become a new resource for some out there to help understand how to acquire some of these pieces of equipment.
Thank you so much, Roy. Christy, we do have one question, I think, in the chat box, if you want to read that off to Roy.
Absolutely. So the question in the chat says, we often hear concerns from NPS employees about people, quote unquote, abusing the claim they have a disability when using e-bikes, because they come across e-bike users who, quote unquote, look healthy. Do you have any advice for NPS employees, volunteers, partners who have this concern?
Yes, I actually have the best way to lead with curiosity. I think when you lead with curiosity, it prevents the altercation to start on a negative foot. Recently, some firemen, I was on a trailhead and I rolled by these two guys that were in a fire truck and were getting out for their day to ride, and thinking, firemen, they're like the most helpful people out there. The guy looks at me and he goes, "Oh, isn't that cute? You just roll on by us and think it's all funny that you don't have to pedal." And I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry that's how you have to start your day, but I'm actually disabled
And if you would have led with curiosity, it would have been a much different outcome of how I would be taking this. But unfortunately for you, I'm disabled. I can't use my legs, and this bike gets me out into the woods. So I hope you can respect that. And instantaneously, he knew that, acting like, a complete jerk is just not the best way. So I think the best way is to lead with curiosity and not with assumption, because we all know what happens when we assume.
Thank you, Roy. That's all I see for now, and we'll go to Joe. Joe, I would love to see your devices and how you use them and where you use them and the barriers that you've encountered using your devices.
Yeah, it's really interesting with all of this because there are so many different types of equipment that people with disabilities use, mainly because there's so many different disabilities and so many different ability levels within that. Just to tag on to what Roy was saying, I think his lead by curiosity when approaching someone to try to have an understanding as to why they're using whatever piece of equipment they are is such a great way and positive way to start the conversation out. And to add one last thing to that, I think when you do encounter someone that maybe you don't think, maybe they don't look like they have a disability, there are a large number of invisible disabilities. So that person might look like they can walk around just fine and all of that, but sorry, phone's ringing here. But see if I can turn that off. Sorry about that. Yes, somebody might have extreme joint pain. They might have a lot of pain in their muscles. They may not be able to walk more than 50 or 100 feet, but it might look like when they step off their bike, they have zero issues going on. So hidden disabilities are very real and just as big of a deal as other disabilities that are more visible. But to jump into my equipment, let's see, do the sharing of the screen. So I'll start off by, I use two things. So the first one, these are just off the internet, but because they have better pictures of this stuff than I have. What's on the front of this wheelchair you're seeing is very similar to my setup where I have mountain bike tires on my wheelchair. And then I use a thing called the freewheel attachment on the front of it, which is essentially a fifth wheel that you put and attach to the foot plate. It attaches right in between where my feet sit on the wheelchair. And then when I start rolling forward, it actually lifts the two smaller caster wheels off the ground. So now I'm rolling on 3 wheels, and the third wheel in front that I'm rolling on is 12 inches versus the small 3.5-inch wheels I have at the front of my wheelchair without it. So that allows me to roll over rocks, to go through mud, to go through water easily, big cracks, roots, whatever might be in front of me on the trail. And so this, when I'm in a situation, snow, even like in this picture, somebody rolling on the snow, this would be something that I would use when I don't need something more than my wheelchair to access an environment. It's very simple, very easy for me to attach. It's always in my van with me, so wherever I go, if I think I need it, I just throw it on my wheelchair. It takes all of 30 seconds to attach and detach, and then I'm able to go access service roads, any kind of gravel roads, some trails. I could get close to some areas on rivers, things like that. So the freewheel is something that has opened up a ton of freedom. The story I've always told about the freewheel when I first got it was I had just gotten a puppy at the time and was taking him to a dog park that was all a gravel road that went around it. And that dog park without the freewheel, which I didn't have when I first got the dog, was something that I could do one lap around it, and I was exhausted because there was so much restriction because of my front wheels that I was having to do a wheelie through half of the trail, the really steep sections of the trail, which really aren't that steep, but for a wheelchair user are very steep. I mean, like let's say a 4% grade going downhill. Well, when it was on gravel, that became very sketchy without the freewheel, because if anything catches, it's like being on a skateboard. If a rock gets in the wheel, you're going to get sent forward and hit the ground. So I got the freewheel and took my dog there. And the first time I went there, I ended up, instead of doing one, I did 4 laps around the dog park. Was having a total blast because I actually had a freedom of movement. And the only reason why I stopped was because it was 10 o'clock and I was in Minneapolis and the park shut down at 10 p.m. And so it opened my mind to, with the right equipment, there's so much more that I can do. And if I just look at my wheelchair as is straight from the factory, that seems limiting. But when you have the proper equipment, you can go so much further. Before I jump into the hand cycle, I've showed this one picture. So I mentioned earlier that I don't have grip in my left hand. And so I use a system called quad grips, which in this photo, it has a person that's holding on to the hand grip for their hand cycle, and that's what they use to crank. And then there are 2 pins that come out on the top and bottom of my wrist. And those are pretty tight. So I can't pull my hand through those 2 pins. So now those 2 pins allow me the ability to pull from my wrist. So it's really easy to push something without grip, but it's really challenging to pull something without grip. And so the quad grips is on all of my road bike, my mountain bikes, pretty much anything that I need to be able to pull with that has a crank system on it. I use quad grips. Otherwise, I can't do it. And that also gives you the ability, with a slightly different setup, to brake and shift gears and manage the whole piece of equipment properly and safely with somebody that has absolutely no grip. And so, amazing little invention that has helped a lot of people out in my situation. I have 2 videos I'll show. One's actually of me hiking in Grand Teton National Park. And we went and tested out a trail recently, right before the snow fell. So there is a little bit of snow on the ground in this, which made it that much more challenging. But I'm using what's called a reactive adaptations nuke, which is a trike. It's a hand cycle, and it's built for mountain biking or any kind of off-road settings. So it's 2 wheels in the front, 1 wheel in the rear. It's rear wheel driven. It has suspension in the rear, but not in the front. And this one has power assist. So that electric motor really helps me a lot to be able to access environments I wouldn't be able to otherwise. I can speak as somebody who's been cranking hand cycles before power assistance was available. And I used to use my hand cycle that didn't have it. And every single time I went out was a complete sufferfest. And so I would go do 3 miles on a trail, and that would take me 4 hours, and maybe climb, 500 feet in the process or something. So this power assistance has opened up my world and many people in my situation to be able to access more environments without having to, have quite as much muscle function as maybe somebody that doesn't need it. So here's a quick video. There's some talking in it, and it'll explain how and why what I'm doing.
On this bike.
All right, so we tried to get to the lookout for Phelps Lake. You can see behind, there's a bunch of steps that only get bigger and more narrow. So we're maybe a couple 100 yards away and are calling it. So this spot is not accessible. But just so everybody knows, I'm on the Nuke off-road hand cycle with power assist in a national park where they don't allow mountain bikes. But since I have a disability, this is totally allowed. The key is to go hiking speeds. So this is a mobility device and not a mountain bike. So we have nothing but downhill on the way out. As you can see, it'd be a little tricky. I'm kind of forced to go slow, but even if it was summer, I'd be going the same speed as other people hiking so that we're all safe and flowing on the trail properly. We have pretty much one opportunity right now to let the Park Service know that we can be respectful on the trail with this kind of equipment. So let's all collectively make a good impression and be respectful out there. But use your tools as you need them. This last shot is me going the same speed as my buddy who's hiking next to me as we're descending out from the trail we tried to go on. The one part about this video that I think is really important when we talk about creating more opportunities in national parks is a lot of what I face isn't limitations based on my ability and the equipment that I use. A lot of what I face when it comes to accessibility into the outdoors is more the human-made obstacles that are on trails that get in my way. Now, there are a lot of natural barriers. Like, I'm not going to get myself to the top of the Grand in the Tetons. Like, I recognize that. And that hand cycle is not going to get me there. But on mellower trails, like what was going to Phelps Lake in that video, what we encountered was a trail that was 90% totally accessible for me on using my hand cycle, my mobility device. What we encountered for the last bit was a series of steps that were made on the trail that made it to where I wasn't going to be able to access the overlook to see the lake and have the view. That part of the trail could have been made in a way that didn't have steps like that, because I could actually get over rocks and things like that if need be. But when it comes to steps, like this was a step every 3 feet, maybe not even 3 feet, and each one was they increasingly got taller as it went on, and some of them were above a foot tall, things like that, and that is what actually stopped me. So it wasn't the natural environment that stopped me, it's what was created to build the trail. So I think the more that the Park Service and the people maintaining these trails and or building new trails are aware of the equipment, the other equipment that might be on those trails, the better we can build these trails to work for everyone, so that more trails are accessible to people with disabilities. So I think that was like a key thing, a key find that we found on this trail. If we'd have taken the lower one, we know we could have gotten to the lake, because we've done that one before, and we explored this one to see what kind of things we were up against, and it was how the trail was built, not the natural environment. So that's something worth noting in any kind of new maintenance on trails or new trails being built, is think about the other equipment on wheels, and if a wheeled device could get over that or not, because that's going to make or break it for someone like myself. The next video I'll show is me on the same hand cycle, so 2 wheels in the front, 1 in the rear, with power assist on a trail, and I'm actually encountering a horse on the trail. And this is, in Grand Teton National Parks, there are some areas where horses are allowed, and so it is something that someone can encounter. This is the way I approach encountering this, or other humans for that matter. Like, it's just about being nice and letting people know what's going on, and trying to respectfully both pass each other. This one's on a somewhat narrow of a single track trail, maybe a little bit wider than your traditional single track. And it was a side hill, so there wasn't a lot of room for the horse. The horse actually had to go down on the side hill to get around me, which was a thing, because his hooves were pretty close to my face. But there's a little bit of talking in this, and me basically trying to navigate my way around this horse. So I'll get this one going here.
Talking to him.
I don't know where the guy's supposed to go around you.
So side hill for me is really tippy.
Right. She could go down there.
If she can go down here, I can go as far up here if that works.
Closer and I'll go around.
Okay. What's your horse's name? Lakota. I'm a human, just so you know. Sometimes I get a little nervous with these things. Oh, hi, buddy. You get nervous? What would you like me to do?
Just stay there. Come on.
Hi, Lakota.
Come on.
Hi. Hi.
Come on.
Hi, buddy. All right. Somewhat nerve-wracking. Felt like I was face level with a good kick. How you guys doing? Doing well, thanks. Now that I didn't get kicked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
So this one was in a situation that was, on actual mountain bike trails, on mountain bike trails. But this is something that's definitely a situation I can or probably will encounter in a national park. So the whole approach to that was just talking to the horse. I learned that one the hard way, where I encountered a horse on the trail and didn't really know what to do, and the horse got really spooked and started kind of bucking the lady that was on top of her, and her advice was always talk to the horse. And just but I found that same technique works for humans too. Hey, I'm on a weird piece of equipment, and what's the best way for us to get around each other, and it usually sparks good conversation, and why I'm using the piece of equipment that I'm using, and how it helps me access the environments that I'm encountering other people in. So that hand cycle and many like it are the only way I will ever be able to access these environments. And so it's really important that the proper education is out there for both park rangers and our communities in general, to understand that this equipment is allowed, it's needed, and also how can we make it more accessible and available to more people with disabilities. And that could even come from like renting equipment or having the ability for people to rent equipment that will allow them to get into the parks and use them. So that is the two big pieces of equipment that allow me to access these environments.
Joe, thank you so much. Those videos were incredibly helpful. We are running short on time, but I'd still like to answer a few questions that are in the chat. Two from Jeremy and Bob Radcliffe kind of touch on similar things, and you kind of touched on them yourself, Joe. What are small things on the trail that could make accessibility like mind-blowing, like just a small change on the trail? Something that I know as a hand cycle user myself is that, as you said in your last video, we are incredibly tippy. So being aware of the side slope of the trail for me is something that makes or breaks a trail, because if I'm going to be stressed that I'm like leaning one way or that I'll tumble down the mountain and roll, that's a huge something that can be mitigated. And I've found that if you just stack rocks on the outside edge of the trail, just like lining the trail anyway, that's a simple fix that can help. And then I can put my outside wheel on that rock and ride it like a rail, and it keeps me from being so tippy. So I'm wondering if you guys have a quick, any of the three of you have a quick something that could make a trail more feasible for you, or make the whole park experience something more enjoyable for you.
I'll jump in real quick with the one that I noticed the most, which is right out of the gate at the trailhead. Oftentimes trails have two posts that are really close together for people to walk through, to not allow any kind of wheeled devices, that could be ATVs, trucks, whatever, to be able to access these environments. And it totally makes sense for the things that aren't allowed on there, but it completely prevents someone like myself with a hand cycle to even access the trail. Like I can't even get through the trailhead entrance. So when that kind of stuff, when I encounter that, oftentimes like up in Montana, for example, I know of a lot of them around Missoula that the entire trail is accessible except for what was built at the trailhead. So that's one area that, I mean, will obviously increase my level of enjoyment of a trail.
Jason or Rory, anything to add to that?
So I would just echo both of those, right? So on Quinn, on yours, just on trail building, you know, we went into the woods, right, to be in wild places. And so I know I wanted to go where nobody else was. And that usually meant a very small, you know, like an 8-inch path or something, right, to get to that place. But now I'm in a position where that 8-inch path doesn't work anymore. But you know, to have a trail that would be that 32 inches or whatever it is, gosh, that'd be a lot of resources to make that happen into beautiful wild places. But to be able to at least to have a few of those designated in a park would be wonderful, that we could get our machines out there, right? So that's a huge one. And then, yeah, just echoing Joe's, looks like I'm in Montana. That's everywhere I look is Forest Service, and there's a Kelly hump right at the beginning of a trail, or a Kelly hump is like a giant ditch so that you would bottom out in a vehicle if you tried to go through it. Or, yeah, like he said, just boulders next to poles so that no one can get through the thing. So, yeah, I just mainly echo what both of you just said. I think for me, the main deterrent to get out there is for me, it's like public perception. I mean, it's one of the reasons why and you can't change, as the Park Service, you can't change public perception. But, you know, it's one of the reasons why I stick to like remote Forest Service trails where I know, like, no, I'm not going to run into anybody, you know, and I can go out there and have my wilderness experience without being judged for being the guy of, didn't you read the signs? Are you not supposed to have bikes on this thing? You know, it's like, you just don't want to run into that. And so that for me is probably one of the biggest deterrents. So.
Thank you, Jason. Roy, would you like any last words to add on what would make a trail better or your park experience better with maps or information, any of that jazz?
Just to lead on what I said about the curiosity, if you actually listen to Joe's video, the way he interjected with the person on the horse, that was a perfect example of leading with curiosity. But for me, yeah, I think, the biggest thing is, I think one of the biggest things is better signage that can be read from any perspective, I think is really important, and also provides direction of trail. I think like that also helps, because like if not only does it make it tough if you're already in an adaptive, bike, but now you're going the wrong direction on a trail. Now you got two wrongs don't make a right or something, in some people's minds. So I think that always helps too. The more signage, the better. I agree with the ditches, but yeah, perfect example of how to lead with curiosity. Joe Stone, we're talking to that lady on that horse.
Well, I want to thank all three of you very much for spending the time with us today and talking about your disability and the devices that you use to recreate back in wilderness. I know we didn't have much time for questions, but please feel free to email me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have moving forward that this panel might have given you. So thanks everyone for joining.
And as a reminder, this recording will be posted on the Common Learning portal probably in like a week. I just need to caption it and we'll have it up for you, and we'll have more Disability Dialogue series calls coming up soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.